5, 4, 3, 2.
What makes you say that?
Hello, friends. Welcome to What Makes You Say That. This is episode 4. My name is Bryan Williams, and I'm happy to be joined once again by my esteemed colleague and Kerr family executive chef, Mr. John Kerr. How's it going for you today, John?
It's going fine. Thanks very much. Nice to be here again.
Hey, around here, we like to warm up before the big game. So are you ready for this week's warm-up question?
I'm ready.
So we've been asking the students, what have they learned about themselves during this process? I'm wondering, what have you learned about yourself? Something that maybe surprised you since we started this quarantine?
Oh, that's well, I've learned a few things, mostly that I was thinking about the fact that, astronauts and Mars journeys of 3 years. I was thinking, well, I'm 50 days in here. If I could do another 900 days like this, I might be able to go to Mars. So, but I'm making the best of it, and I've learned that you need to keep yourself occupied, right? And I'm very fortunate. I've definitely taken stock of the things that are important in my life and the people that are important, and I definitely count myself amongst the lucky people.
Yeah,
sure.
I agree wholeheartedly. Being grateful and finding things, finding silver linings right now is super important, and I've found that for myself as well. Well, thanks for that, John. We've got a great episode. It's a science-themed episode planned for you today. We'll be catching up with senior school science and chemistry teacher Miss Jennifer Kirk about what teaching science online looks like, and we also get to chat with an epidemiologist and current BH parent Cynthia Carr about how COVID-19 has changed, well, everything for everyone. That and so much more. But the episode doesn't ever really start until we hear that quote.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if people know that I don't get to see the warm-up question. It just comes out of the blue, and you don't get to see the quote. It just kind of comes back at you.
It's great.
The quote is really based on the warm-up question, and it's not attributed to anybody. It's just kind of come out of my reading and my thinking. And but the quote today is, "Love is the effort you put in." So that's what I've been thinking about.
Well, it's amazing that we can just communicate telepathically or by osmosis or whatever it is. We have that connection. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a great start to this episode. Well, John, we find ourselves now in the 7th week of social distancing and isolation. How was the 6th week or the start of the 7th week been for you and your family?
It's been, the weather's been, we've been able to get out in the yard and turn some beds and trim some trees and do that kind of stuff. So that's been nice. It's funny because I'm reading still, and I'm discovering words that I never knew that are already been deemed archaic, right? So it's it's so funny that I'm learning a new word that is already obsolete, and so I think it's a little bit of the irony of all of this.
Yeah, every week on Roast the Host, I think about what word I can ask you to define, so maybe I'll have to look for some of those.
Yeah, otherwise, it's the same. It's really the same.
And you were telling me you haven't really left your house.
No, I go for a walk with the family. But other than that, no, I don't leave my house really. So like I said, I count myself amongst the lucky people.
Well, I do leave my house, and I can tell you the grocery store experience is totally different now. You're not even going to recognize it when you do go back. It's so peaceful once you get in there, and there's really nobody around. It's actually quite nice, other than the added stress of the arrows on the floor, which you have to follow. And, you almost now need a blueprint of the store to make your list, because if you don't get it on your way by, there's no going back.
Yeah, you got to go all the way around.
Or you just don't. You're like, oh, sorry.
Next week.
Yeah, we can't have milk this week. I missed it. There's no way I could go back. The arrow's on the floor. But, I think that the grocery store experience is certainly different, but it can be nice. But of course, that people always find ways to ruin it. People who don't understand the arrows, stopping in the aisles, browsing instead of having a list. I think these are the same people who are oblivious to the rules of sidewalk chicken. But yeah, my one excursion a week is to the grocery store, and And I got to say that with some kind of minor changes, I could live with that.
Yeah, no comparative shopping.
That's right.
You grab it, you put it in the cart,
and you go. And you go.
Yeah.
We are very happy to be joined now by Miss Jennifer Kirk, senior school science and chemistry teacher. How are you doing today, Jen?
Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. Same old. Johnny?
Yeah. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us today.
No problem.
So I'm sure we're many weeks in now with remote learning. I'm just wondering, how has the transition to online learning been for you and for our science learners?
It actually hasn't been too bad. I mean, I'm very thankful that our students are quite independent and responsible. It took a little while to kind of just get used to the new procedure and how things were set up and the organization of it. But I think we're in it now, and I found something that seems to work for me and for my classes. So that's good. I continue to get emails and posts from kids at all hours, which is good because it shows that they're working, and because everybody's in different time zones, they're working when they can, which is awesome.
Yeah, and what about labs? I'm assuming both you and every single parent out there has very much discouraged any chemistry experiments at home. How is that working out?
It so happens that this is the time of the year where I'm actually a little lighter in labs. We're pretty heavy from September to December, just the units that we cover. So at this point, we're naturally a little lighter, which is great. It allows Mr. Gelly to kind of do some inventory and clean up in the lab. But we've still done some demos. I've done, my grade 11s are doing solutions, and I actually did a demo sitting at my computer with some soft drinks, and we've talked about boiling point elevation and freezing point depression. So it's been fun.
That's cool.
I just want to jump in because strangely enough, Mila was doing a science experiment yesterday, and I kind of wandered in on it, and she had 3 containers of very hot water and was looking for a thermometer. And of course, she's taken the medical thermometer. She was using the oven probe. Like, what was the temperature? So, I mean, equipment is obviously an issue, but what any unique solutions? You mentioned soft drinks, but how are you making do with what you have at home?
Well, we talk about the relationship between temperature and solubility and pressure and solubility. So just even talking about why when you open up a bottle or a can of pop, it makes that sound, and it's a change in pressure. Or when you open up a bottle and you don't, like a 2-liter bottle, and you don't actually finish the 2-liter bottle, that if you squeeze out the air and then seal it, that'll help to keep the bubbles in it.
That's the reason I no longer buy 2-liter bottles.
Exactly. My grade 11s have been really enjoying that. They're like, that is some chemistry that I can use. So it's been
real world application.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I did notice the thermometer was the one thing that I actually needed. I'm like, when I go to the school, I probably should grab one of those stainless steel probes.
Yeah, the oven probe will not work.
Thermometer, though.
Yeah. Has anything surprised you or anything unexpected come up in the classes since we moved online?
I think it's always surprising to see who participates and who doesn't. For the most part, it's been pleasant surprises. You know, some kids who didn't necessarily participate in a live class, like a one-on-one situation, they're taking advantage of these opportunities, maybe because they can be a little more anonymous. So that's been interesting. I think just in terms of the time zones, the questions that come at all different hours has always been really interesting. And I think just the girls getting used to the idea of teams, that there have been quite a few more in the past couple of weeks who've been up for a one-on-one conversation, like, hey, I just need an explanation. And so I've had some one-on-one calls, which has been fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's exactly what the software and what the programs are supposed to do. It's supposed to bring people together. And I think our students are certainly learning more and more about that as you go along too. And so are the teachers. I
am too.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of leads into our next question. What have you specifically learned from the students throughout this? I mean, they're learning from you. We know that. What about you from them?
I mean, I'm always amazed at how flexible they are and how gracious they are and how patient they are with older people in technology. So there've been a couple of times if it's a windier day, my internet will go and I'll have some problems, and I've had to reset my modem, and I've told the kids, keep talking or stay on. If I lose you, I'll join, and they've been there when I've come back. So
well, that's good.
You can't strategically leave the room anymore.
No.
Yeah, well, that's great. So obviously this is not a situation that we want to find ourselves in again, but have you found any silver linings about teaching this way? And perhaps at the same time, what do you miss most about being in the school?
Oh, well, that's easy. I miss my colleagues and I miss my students. I miss seeing them. Interactions online just aren't quite the same. Although I had a class this morning and I had a kid had to tell me, okay, I turned my mic on because I'm laughing. So I need you to hear that I'm actually laughing at your joke.
Yeah, I miss that too.
Oh, yeah. John and I have talked about that on these episodes a lot. You can't read the room, and it's crickets. I mean, sometimes it's crickets anyways, but,
yes.
but now more than ever, right?
It's really nice to have to be able to go to the bathroom when I actually have to go to the bathroom. That's key. I find I'm getting out for walks over lunch instead of, sitting at my desk and working, which is really great for, my mental health. But I do find I have to remember to actually get up, because it's very easy on days where you've got lots of meetings to be just stuck at a computer for a few hours. So
yeah, I find my eyes sometimes are burning, and I'm like, why are my eyes burning?
I'm finding that now. They just started street cleaning, and the dust just sends me over the edge. So I took a Benadryl yesterday morning so I could breathe, and almost didn't make my afternoon class. I was so wiped out.
Yeah, Benadryl does that.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like our science learners are doing a great job, as all of our students are, and the faculty as well. So I just want to thank you on behalf of our students for all the hard work that you put in and the great experiences you're providing to our students as we continue to navigate this very difficult and uncertain time of our lives. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So on episode 3, John, you answered the BH staff trivia correctly. It took you only 2 facts. So I think we'll switch roles today, and maybe you can ask or give me some of the facts, and I will try to guess which BH staff member you have selected.
All right. Well, this will be different than my roast the hose questions, because unlike those, these are verifiable. Short order. So I guess they're kind of like clues, right? So here's clue number 1. This individual has taught every grade from JK to grade 12. Now, not too many people have done that, but so of course I'm going to start with a tough clue.
Yeah, well, if that was the easy one, we'd be in for some trouble. I will reserve my guess.
All right.
Clue number 2.
Clue number 2 is this individual has worked as a nurse's aide prior to becoming a teacher.
Well, give me some hard ones, John.
All right. And the final clue is this individual played for Team Manitoba. And if you want the bonus clue, I'll give you the sport.
I'll take the phone a friend hint, yeah.
All right, the sport is volleyball. Any ideas? They could also give you the nickname from high school, but I don't think that she would appreciate it.
All right. I'll get back to you with an answer later.
Okay.
Well, I think about it. Oh my goodness, John. So there's no doubt our students are learning during this remote learning process, whether it's content or other things. John, I'm wondering about, in our grade 9 social and English class, we have it combined, and we're getting a lot of really good feedback from the students and a lot of evidence of learning, but they're not necessarily content learning that is maybe the most impressive right now. What do we see in especially in the grade 9s, but probably in all classes?
We think back to previous years where I know we were so impressed when we started to use the ladder of feedback and hear how our students were able to both give and receive meaningful feedback. And we thought that, that was almost as rewarding as watching the finished product of them putting together their Human Rights Slam. Obviously, this year is a little bit different. It's ripe with different challenges. It wasn't, as you pointed out, an easy thing to do when we were meeting at school on a regular basis. This has made it doubly hard, I would think. But at the same time, when we talk to the students about kind of what they learned in the process, the things that they shared, it was amazing because it didn't seem like we were talking to grade 9s. We could have been at a staff meeting. We could have been sitting with adults. The vocabulary and the lessons that they talked about, they used words like communication. They used words like organization, talked about intrinsic motivation, just really open and honest about the challenges and what those challenges, that's rigor, right? I mean, in a way, that's rigor. It's emotional rigor, but that's where we get the learning. And so I just have to say that even though it didn't turn out, the way we hoped, I think the lessons learned are still significant and extremely valuable.
Yeah, and I think throughout the process, the students were able to create some very meaningful final products, regardless of the curveballs that were thrown at them this year. I mean, like I said before, this is a very difficult task that we assign every single year, and every year we're blown away, but none more so than this year, where they had to adapt and literally figure out for themselves how are they going to create this poem, this poetry slam, when they can't meet, when they can't be filmed together. And then even though perhaps like in any group, there were some communication breakdowns, like you said, the feedback we received and the lessons that they learned were very, very positive, and they understand why they're valuable.
Yeah, it just makes me excited about the fact that these young people are acquiring these essential tools that will only help them and guide them in the future as they approach the next task, right? So yeah, I think hats off to the grade 9s, and I know everybody's probably got that kind of story coming out of their class. So, but yeah, it was eye-opening for me.
Absolutely. A big shout out to the grade 9s. But again, like John just said, these types of lessons are happening in every classroom at BH right now. Our students deserve a ton of credit. So my guess, I mean, realistically, off air, John gave me a hint and basically gave me the answer that it is, in fact, Mrs. Christine Kerr, his wife.
It is.
And I was unsuccessful because I didn't think he'd go there on the first one.
Yeah, and I did think of the psychology through there a little bit. He'll never guess the most obvious person.
And that was absolutely true. Well done, John. We are very lucky to be joined now by a BH parent and epidemiologist, Cynthia Carr. Cynthia, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm great, and thank you for having me.
So while John and I know exactly what an epidemiologist does, there may be a few people who are unclear. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role?
Sure. So short form would be that epidemiology is the study of pattern of disease by person, by place, and by time. So epidemiologists could be a doctor, could be a nurse. We have many backgrounds, but what we have in common is we don't treat patients individually. We're part of a public health team focused primarily on disease prevention and focused on identifying when new diseases come to light, such as this, right away away looking at who's impacted, where is it spreading, to try to identify where the highest risk population is and what we need to do to stop that spread of that disease.
So needless to say, it's a busy time for you.
It's a busy time.
Can you outline kind of what a typical day might, I mean, I'm sure that they're not the same, but what does a typical day these days look like?
Well, ironically, my career path has primarily been in long-term health planning. I work primarily with First Nations in northern communities, so always sort of aware of risk factors in the population pertaining to access to healthcare, to impact of living with other diseases, which we know from COVID-19 that you really want to look after your health and your immune system, because that's what you've got to battle new diseases. So for me right now, I'm kind of managing my long-term projects with sort of keeping on top day to day with what's going on with COVID-19. And my role as an epidemiologist in that area is more in the public health messaging. So participating with media to kind of reiterate what is it that we know now, what is it that we need to do as community members, and what is it that our public health system is doing, and why it's so important to kind of keep working together, because it really is everybody working together right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's highly data driven, isn't it? And I'm just curious about what the numbers are. You know, what kind of numbers are we seeing, and what can we expect to see in the next little bit?
You're right. So epidemiology in general is about data-driven decision-making. So defining what is it that we're trying to measure, how do we measure that, and how do we report that quickly? What we're seeing with COVID-19 is a very similar pattern to flu season, where we're getting more and more data, particularly out of Quebec, of where our highest risk population is, which is elderly residents. If we look around the world to other country examples, we're seeing the same thing, that people with compromised immune system and that are older are very much at risk for poor health outcomes. So the more data we collect to better understand where the risk is, not just for infection, because we know that most people don't actually get very sick. That's actually part of the sneaky strategy of this virus. The smartest virus kind of stays under the radar and infects people so that it can keep thriving. It doesn't want to kill the host, but that's what makes it more dangerous to our most vulnerable population, is that we can unknowingly infect somebody else and then their immune system isn't able to cope. So again, the more testing we can do, the more data we can collect, the more we have confidence of where we need to focus and where we might have a bit of a safety net to kind of ease off some of the social distancing measures. But we still have to keep track of it, because we've learned from other viruses that things can change and they can be worse the second time around.
So we're noticing, and we get updates obviously every day from the Manitoba government. What do you think of the Manitoba numbers? Are they lower compared to other areas? Is that true? What do you think of those numbers?
So definitely in Manitoba, our rates are lower, our death rates are lower, our case rates are lower. We're doing fairly well with testing, but what we need to be careful of, we're lucky that we have not seen those terrible outcomes in our long-term care facilities. We have seen outbreaks. We've seen outbreaks during the flu season, but we've been very lucky that we have not seen the level of impact that we've seen in other areas of the country. We are a lower population density, and we know that with crowding is more opportunity for spread. So we don't have that in Manitoba other than Winnipeg, but we don't have, the subway systems, those kinds of things where, again, people are crowded. But we need to be careful, because we do have a large population of people that are living in communities where they don't have enough housing, where they have challenges in access to healthcare, they have challenges in access to nutritious food, and they also have challenges in access to IT and data. So part of public health messaging is making sure that we as Manitobans understand, as you said, every day we see data, we hear what's going on, what are we supposed to do. But I've been to many northern communities where there is no cell service. And if things are shut down and you can't go to the band office and you can't go to the school for Wi-Fi, you can't continue in school. You're not part of the ongoing messaging, so you're kind of out of the loop. So there's still a lot of risk in our northern and isolated communities that we need to keep on top of, because if we see some outbreaks there, it's going to be quite challenging to deal with, given the lack of housing and the lack of infrastructure for healthcare professionals to come in and spend a great deal of time in the community if there's no place for them to stay as well.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. We hear a lot about herd immunity and even vaccines. So can you tell us a little bit what those terms mean, and maybe give us a little bit of hope if we're close to a vaccine?
Okay, so herd immunity is not possible without individual immunity. So a herd is literally a group. So that's the concept behind vaccination, is that even if not everybody in the population gets their measles, mumps, rubella, or gets their flu vaccine, that if enough of us get our vaccine, that's the tool. But that's not the barrier. That is only the tool to teach our immune system to react to that invader. So even in the flu season, only about 40% of people get their vaccine. And even if you do get your vaccine, we might get the wrong virus because we don't have lifelong immunity to that disease. But it's also really important to remember that just as we can't run faster when we get older, our immune system also doesn't work as well. So even with a vaccine, as we get older, we don't have as much of the cells that we need that are new and healthy to work with that vaccine to fight against the virus. And they also don't communicate as well. So even, for example, this year with the flu vaccine, 6% of kids that had the vaccine still got the flu, but 62% of people age 65 and older that got the flu had the vaccine. So you can see that it's not a magic bullet.
Yeah,
it's really up to us to stay as healthy as possible so that our immune system can work with either lifelong immunity, like if we get the chicken pox as a kid, we know that we have lifelong immunity to that. For some reason, our body can figure it out. But if we don't have that and we don't take care of our health, we're more vulnerable. So in terms of the question about a vaccine, there's lots of steps in science that we have to go through to make sure that that vaccine has been tested, that it can be developed, that it can be distributed. Is it a 1-dose vaccine? Is it a 2-dose vaccine? Do we need 37 million doses? Do we need 75 million doses? So that's not quick. And the vaccine also has to be tested on people in the population. And the challenge is, this is what happened with SARS, that SARS quickly kind of killed itself, fell off the radar. We didn't have enough people that had the virus to continue with vaccine development. So it's kind of a catch-22. So the work will continue. We need to make sure we don't overinvest in one area of research and development, because there's all kinds of other diseases we need to focus on. But we need to continue to understand that if we don't smoke, do our best to eat healthy, all those public health messages, that's our role in staying as healthy as we can until a vaccine is developed. And even then, we still need to be as healthy as possible for that vaccine to work.
So I hear that social distancing isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, I think we just need to continue with a lot of the great things we've learned, the hand washing, not being too close to each other. But obviously, we're human. We need to be together. We're interconnected as a society. We're flying, we're traveling. So, there's 4 other strains of the coronavirus that are constantly in our population. They account for about 1 in 4 common colds. So we don't know what's going to happen with this. So there's SARS, which was a coronavirus that's killed itself. We can't say it's eradicated, but it seems to have tired itself out. There's MERS, which is in the Middle East. Thank God it doesn't transfer very well because it has a very high mortality rate. Then the other 4 are the common cold viruses that cause 1 in 4 common colds. And then there's this. So The reality is that lower respiratory disease is the leading cause of communicable disease death in the world. It's hard to conquer respiratory illness. So we just have to keep as healthy as we can, keep what we've learned in terms of hand washing and hygiene over time, and hope that even if we don't eradicate this virus, which by the way is very rare, even with a vaccine, maybe it will become more endemic, which means common in the population like the other 4 coronaviruses, and very rarely becomes the dangerous lower respiratory infection that can lead to pneumonia and other diseases. So there's lots of pathways this can take, but we just need to be careful and cautious in the next year to see sort of a full cycle go by and see, does this get worse, or does this virus do what a lot of viruses do, which is it actually becomes less lethal because it doesn't want to be caught and wiped out. So it might become more of an endemic common cold.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, that's certainly a lot of that stuff I had never even considered before. So thanks very much. That was very, I mean, in terms of our science faculty and our science students, I'm sure they're going to be really interested in some of the things that you just mentioned, and they might even use it as some course content. I guess just to switch gears a little bit, as a parent of a BH student who is poised to graduate, how are you managing your dedication to best health practices with a graduation while isolating looking more and more likely?
Yeah, so, there's many determinants of health, and obviously the impact of this has not been just on physical health, but it's been very much on mental health and well-being. And we know that our youth are at very vulnerable stages in their development, their emotional development, their social development. And one of the most challenging aspects of a pandemic or situation like this is that state of uncertainty. And as that state of uncertainty continues, it enhances all of our stress levels, our coping skills might be less. And for someone like my daughter, who's a BH lifer, she started in nursery school, obviously, this year is not what she thought it would be. But the gift of us, and we are so lucky that we are not part of the digital divide. Our children have access to not only online schooling and support, but to committed professionals within the Balmoral Hall community for that ongoing learning. And I have noticed myself in kind of listening, the gift of the teachers from Balmoral, and I don't know if this is part of your strategic plan that you've all developed together, is that when you connect with the girls and you say, "How are you? Tell me about your day. Tell me a funny story. Tell me something we might not know." That kind of brings them back to being, I'm a person. I'm not just a psych student. I'm not just the English student. My teacher is also going through all kinds of things, but my teacher wants to know about me. And we're going to bring a little bit of just levity into this situation so that we can then be in the headspace to cope with the uncertainty, but also the certainties of, you got to keep learning. You got to be prepared for university. We can't just slack off here. We need to have our goals in place and our strategies in place. But we recognize that some of you young women are facing a loss that is pretty huge to you. Even if we're going to do our best to make it great, it's still a loss in the sense of what they thought it would be. And how do we transition our thinking to going, okay, I can let go of what I thought it was going to be and move towards what it will be and feel really good about it as a group. So I think that that's been a gift from our Balmoral Hall community, and that I think the girls are going to learn from this, that, I really learned resilience. I really learned some of these transformational approaches to leadership, and one of those is letting go of what I thought was going to be and understanding it's okay now to understand what it is and develop coping skills to deal with that and move forward.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head there. The how how we ask questions of the girls and how the classes are approached. I'm glad that you recognize that. I'm also glad that the girls are recognizing that. And some of our best conversations come from those little check-in questions. And absolutely, I think that finding the lessons that they're learning beyond the course content is very important right now. And as the girls, and they are starting to recognize that, I think more and more of our students are seeing hope.
We did discuss whether we should interview you more as a mother or as an epidemiologist. So,
yeah. And of course, I'm both.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And lots of food for thought there. But thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
And thank you very much for the time and for all of the information. There's lots to digest there. And certainly this has been an excellent interview for everybody to hear. And again, we appreciate your time, and we hope that we can chat with you again on a future episode.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. This week on social media, we posted a community check-in question as well as instructions on how to connect with the show. So please check that out on social media and in the show notes. And this week's question was, what do you miss most about being at the school? And we'd love to hear your responses. For me, it's the noise, it's the energy, and it's the feeling that you get when you enter into the atrium. It's a feeling like no other. It feels like home.
Roast the Host.
We're back with another round of Roast the Host, our most popular segment. Well, I mean, according to me, but our current
My mom likes it too. Yeah.
Our current score of 1-0 in favor of Mr. Kerr. I do, however, have a point pending. Whether or not the NHL returns. I'll try to even it up today, but you, of course, have an opportunity to stretch your lead early on here. I'll start this week, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
The novel Frankenstein was
written. I know how my students feel.
The novel Frankenstein was written by
Mary Shelley.
But that's not the question. That would have been way too easy.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's step it up a little.
Uh-oh.
Why were Mary Shelley's parents famous?
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you.
Well, I know that she ran off with a poet. So I'm hoping that their fame didn't come from her lifestyle choices. But I think they were also novelists or writers, and contributing, I think, to the body of literature. But my guess would be that they were also writers and thinkers. And probably someone was famous for something.
All right. So I wasn't going to do it. You said the word thinker, and I'm going to give you the point. The point to Mr. Kerr. Her father was William Goodwin, a political philosopher. Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, a notable feminist and philosopher. So good job, Mr. Kerr.
Phew. That's a grade 10 novel. That's Ms. Smith's.
A bonus point if you can guess who I approached to get me that question.
Well, was it Ms. Smith?
Retired BH teacher Stephen Leipzig.
Oh, good call. Yeah, nice. Yeah, he liked that one. Good. All right. Okay, here's one for you. This is another hockey question, and it's a Winnipeg Jets question.
Oh, the pressure.
We know that you can't Google it, but
the pressure
is the all-time leading scorer for the Winnipeg Jets?
Oh, see, now you think you have a cut and dry answer, but you don't. Are we talking 1.0 Winnipeg hockey history?
I think I would think that this is all time. Both. I did think about that, but I think it's all time. Both Jets.
All time, both Jets. Yeah, I still think that it would have to be Dale Hawerchuk.
You got it. Good work.
I'm actually sweating right now.
Yeah, 929 points, 379 goals. I think it worked out to be about 1.2 points per game, which is really impressive.
Ducky with the answer. Yes, and I'm allowed. My father will be so proud of me. He probably would have not spoken to me.
Good work.
All right, with the score 2-1 for Mr. Kerr, that's it for another segment of Roast the Host. As we end episode 4, we'd really like to thank all of the BH moms out there for everything they do and wish all of you a very happy Mother's Day on Sunday, May the 10th. Thank you to Miss Jennifer Kirk for highlighting some of the ways our science students have continued to learn in the online environment instead of in the third floor labs at BH. Also, thank you to epidemiologist and current BH parent Cynthia Carr for her expertise and perspective on COVID-19 and what it means for each of us. A shout out, as always, to Mr. John Kerr for his insight, the laughs, and the company.
It was fun. Yeah. Take care, folks.
And finally, a big thanks to producer Chris in the booth for always taking care of us and for editing out most every one of my ahs and ums. We'll be back next week with episode 5, where we'll be catching up with our BH principals, Mrs. Judith Steek and Mrs. Jody Haffenbrack, who will surely have a lot to say about how their roles have shifted since we moved to online learning. We also check in with another BH student about how they're handling the prolonged remote learning. That and more metaphors, stories, and fun. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, friends.
What makes you say that?
What Makes You Say That is a Balmoral Hall School production, all rights reserved.